The cloud is a very important topic, so we keep having a cloud panel every year at the web. Before we get to that panel, there is a great Google space over there on the building as you exit on the right. And there at 10:10, I wanted to talk to you about a talk there from the VP of Engineering of Google, Scott Huffman, at 10:10, if you're interested. And it's about moving Google from search to conversation. So that's an interesting one if you want to see it. If you can't make 10:10, there is all day long, they have a whole Google program. There's a little Google conference within the conference going on in that building. Make sure you visit it. Anyway, now let's go to our cloud panel, which is moderated by Robin Wouters, who is the founder editor of tech.eu. He just launched it a few days ago. And Brad Garlinghouse, who is the CEO of Hightail. Mark Shutterworth, the founder of Ubuntu, went to space. I'm very jealous, for real. And Werner Vogels, the CTO of Amazon, who came in flying over on a drone that Jeff Bezos gave him. Welcome, guys.
Thank you, Loic.
Welcome.
Yes, good morning, everyone.
I want to go to space. Where's the drone?
I'm too heavy.
The heavyweight in cloud computing.
With a lot of facial hair.
Yes, correct. Wow. I didn't notice that until you pointed it out.
Yeah,
good morning, everyone. We have a super exciting panel. I hope you've woken up by now. So Loic gave a brief introduction of our speakers, but we're going to do a little more, so just so we understand the background of the people on stage today. I'll start with myself. I'm the founding editor of a new digital publication called tech.eu, which is going to cover the European technology industry in depth with analysis, research, etc. Not important. More importantly, we have a great panel today. Let's kick off with Brad. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself? The theme is going to be the next 10 years in cloud computing. What I want you to say is what's kept you busy in the past 10 years.
Perfect. So my name is Brad Garlinghouse. I'm the CEO of a cloud-based file management company called Hightail, formerly called Usendit. We rebranded to reflect the future, really, of not only where we are today, but where we're going as a company. The last 10 years, I've spent time on both the consumer side, spent a long stint at Yahoo, and then a couple other smaller stints, and excited to be here and talk about where the future of the cloud is going.
Thank you. Mark?
Mark Shutterworth, founder of Ubuntu. 10 years ago, I was just back from the adventure that Loic referred to, going to space with the Russians. And before that, I was very involved in cryptography and security and the early stages of the e-commerce revolution.
And then what happened? You founded Canonical.
Yeah, I became fascinated by the shift in business models for away from licensing towards services. And so that was the genesis of Ubuntu, which is a very popular platform for cloud computing, used very heavily on sort of all of the major public clouds today. And a hotbed of a lot of the innovation that's happening, in layers above the infrastructure. So exciting to be here.
Awesome. Werner? CTO of a small bookstore called Amazon.
Yeah, that one,
In 2003, it was a bookstore.
It was a bookstore, right?
Yeah. That was also 2003 was more or less the moments when we started thinking about how to open up a number of our, let's say, internal technologies to the outside world. And I think, although I do think, wow, all the technologies that we've developed over time are amazing, really. I think the biggest side of cloud is that it's a business transformation. Now, I think the business model that came with it, where you only pay for resources that you've used, you acquire resources on demand, you release them when you no longer need them, that falls exactly into place into what the economy needs. We've actually been doing this in other parts of our businesses forever already. Look at HR. We hire people when we need them more, we release them when we no longer need them go, you pay for others' core competencies. And in every other piece of our businesses, that's what we have been doing forever. It's just that in IT, we've been totally lagging because we've been held hostage by sort of these large IT providers that the only way to drive costs down was to make very long contracts. And that totally eliminated any flexibility. And I think in many organizations, the IT organization is seen as a blocker, not as an enabler of innovation. I think the shift that we've been able to drive with cloud in business is a business revolution, much more than a technology revolution. If this would be the next thing from mainframe to mini to what is a client server, web, and now cloud, this wouldn't be this big.
Yeah, sure. So Amazon Web Services was launched in 2006, I believe?
Yeah, the first service is 2006.
So it hasn't even been around for 10 years, so now we're going to discuss the next 10 years. Is it even possible to predict what the cloud computing industry is going to look like in 10 years?
I think there will be less and less data centers owned by individual companies. They won't disappear. Data centers won't disappear. But I think there will be less and less. I think hopefully we've been able to drive the cost down to a point that we no longer think about it. We've lowered our pricing now, is it 39 times without any competitive pressure? Imagine, when you woke up this morning, you switched on the light in your room, you didn't think about how much that costs you. If we can get compute and other things to that particular cost level, it will drive innovation that is incredible. In 5 years' time from now, cloud will continue to drive tremendous innovation across the board in many different areas. And whether that is some stuff that I'm really excited about is sort of the match of offline world and the online analytics. So all these sensors that are being generated, that are generating these massive amounts of data in real time, do analytics on them, and then feed them back to the places where they are. And that's just in the beginning of that. In 4 or 5 years from now, it will have major impact.
Brad, what are some of the trends you see in your business, from your perspective?
Well, I think it's incredibly hard to predict where we're going to be 10 years from now. In 2003, a guy that we've all heard of named Bill Gates predicted that within 2 years, spam would be dead. In 2007, his replacement, Steve Ballmer, predicted that the iPhone would not have any substantive market share. But not just to pick on Microsoft. Actually, Steve Jobs 10 years ago predicted that subscription music was bankrupt.
Right.
So I think it's very difficult to predict where we'll be 10 years from now. Here's what I think we can predict. It's not just about cloud-based storage, right? We talk about the cloud, and I think for a lot of us, it's about storage, and that's been the kind of primary way people engage. At Hightail, what we think about and what we would predict is it's not about storage, it's about sharing, and it's about control. For me, 10 years ago, the center of my data universe was my laptop. I took my laptop everywhere, I took it on my honeymoon, and it wasn't because I was working all the time, it's because that was the center of my data universe. It was my personal data, it was my professional data. When I move that data to the cloud because I want to access it from anywhere, my tablet, what have you, I don't want to give up control. Right. I don't want to give up the ability to see who's accessed it, when it's been accessed. And before I knew that because it was my laptop. I knew that Robin touched my laptop. I knew if Mark touched my laptop. And I think in the world we are living in, the transition we're in this weird place where people can access your data and you don't know who's accessing it. And I'm not talking about the NSA. We can talk about that too. But
we will.
Yeah. But it's very interesting how little visibility. And so we are very much invested. Today, Hightail already provides really robust ability to see who's accessed your data, read, receipt, things like that I think are going to continue to be a trend.
Right. Mark, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I love this idea that when a new way of seeing things or a new technology comes along, it takes 2 waves to really appreciate it. Because in the first wave, we look at that new thing through the lens of what we previously understood. So when movies came out, they were filmed stage plays, and it took 5-10 years before directors took the cameras outside and really gave life to movies as we know them today. When the web came out, it was brochure where companies invested a large amount of money taking their brochureware and putting that online. It took 5-10 years before the web emerged as the tool that we know today. And I think cloud computing is just at the cusp of that same sort of rebirth. Companies initially engage with infrastructure as a service as servers, right? Those are really quick servers that I can get, and I can just pay for them as I use them. But in fact, it's something fundamentally different. It's a different way of accessing the resources. And some things translate, your passion for control and shaping of what's going on. But some things are fundamentally new and need to get born in that era. And I think we're just seeing now the emergence of ways of thinking about computing that really express what the cloud is capable of. The stuff that I'm really excited about is almost the ability for to create code that runs itself. Really to start to get the extraordinary levers that companies like Google and Facebook have in their operations into operations for much smaller institutions, right? To get to the point where you don't need to have skills that match all the things that you're doing, right? You simply are able to consume capabilities because the code runs itself. And I think we're just giving birth to that now.
Interesting.
Well, we see actually that in quite a few of even our well-known web customers. Take, for example, Airbnb. Was it 150,000 persons using it every night? So they have about 1,000 EC2 instances. Right. Was it 50 terabytes of data? 5 people running the whole show. Yeah, that's and all of their other people on their payroll actually care about building better products instead of keeping the lights on.
Right.
Right, and the key there is not how fast you can get those 1,000 servers.
No.
The key is how effectively you can orchestrate and harness the capacity of those 1,000 servers.
Absolutely.
And the ratio to watch is the number of administrators to the number of servers.
Yep.
And you'll see Facebook, Airbnb, Google, it's a very high number. Yeah.
So Werner correctly pointed out that there's a lot of industries and aspects of society that have been impacted by cloud computing already. What I want to know is which aspects of society as a whole or specific industries haven't been impacted that will be in the next few years?
I think healthcare is definitely one. I think healthcare by nature has been slightly more conservative in adopting of technologies. But for example, what we already see probably in the storage space is that in the past when CT scans or other scans were being made, the archiving actually still happened on film. That meant that about 90% of the high-quality digital information that was available disappeared. Yeah, because that's how archiving was done. And it is only until recently that actually all this information is actually being moved to the cloud where it's cost-effective for them to actually long-term archive it and really be guaranteed that digital information will still be there 30 years from now. What you now see then is that the machines from GE and Toshiba and Philips all directly pump this stuff directly into the cloud as an archiving mechanism. But that's only the beginning. All the analytics that happens immediately. Take the sequencers from Illumina. They no longer store these things locally, they pump it out directly to the cloud. Illumina then gives you cloud-based analytics tools to analyze your DNA. All of that. I think healthcare definitely is an area where we'll see major revolutions happening because there will be ubiquitous analytics power available.
Brad, any further thoughts on this?
Well, I think we've probably seen it touch, I would argue, the premise of the question a little bit. I think there's very few pockets that we don't already see an impact, both on the consumer side and the business side. And I agree with Werner's comment that healthcare is clearly a laggard in risk tolerance around data, right. And certainly some of the cloud-based dynamics. But that being said, I was in the doctor's office recently, and I was impressed with and granted, living in the Silicon Valley area, you might have slightly more leading-edge examples, but the central repository of patient records is not really new anymore, and so right. I think there's very few areas that haven't been touched. But I also agree with Mark's point that it's really just the first wave, and I think the second wave will be about applications, and I think both these guys have touched on it. Some of those applications will touch healthcare, some of those applications will touch every other industry. The guys who lose. Twofold. One, the guys who just focus on storage, and two, and Werner commented on this, the days of paying a lot of money for an Oracle installation that is expensive and frankly a pretty shitty product in terms of usability right. are just gone. They're leaving, and they're leaving fast.
Interesting that you should mention that, because you mentioned storage is going to lose this pure storage provider. One of them is Western Digital, who just made an investment in Hightail, right? So the 34 million round that they led?
Yeah, we were excited about it. Western Digital is a company I wasn't that familiar with, but they have an amazing stat that 40% of all digitally stored assets on the planet are stored on Western Digital or HDSD equipment, which is the two parts of the family. And so we're very excited to have them as a partner. I think they have been aggressive about investing in kind of the next wave, and they right. see cloud-based applications as one example of that.
I'm sure, but is that a way for them just to keep track of what's coming to kill them?
I'm more worried about the NSA keeping track of what's going on than Western Digital.
Well, we've touched on the 3-letter word, so might as well continue. So a certain individual by the name of Edward Snowden has thrown quite a bomb under the whole cloud computing industry. And I think I was reading an article in preparation for this panel that said that there was a certain alliance, I think it was Cloud Security Alliance, Cloud Computing Alliance, anyway, that did a study, a survey, and said the US cloud industry has had a significant impact on its business as a result of the revelations. You don't agree, Werner? So.
No, actually, we don't see any slowdown in our European cloud business whatsoever.
That's interesting.
That's things. But let me just put, first of all, Amazon and Amazon Web Services are not part of Prism, period. Yeah, remember, we were absent on all these slides, and so we're not part of that. But that's one thing. I'm part of the steering board for the European Cloud Partnership, which is a sort of an advisory board to Neelie Kroes, the Vice President of the European Union, one of the big promoters of actually really looking careful at what should happen in Europe in post-Snowden. And Neelie actually made a great comment. She said that spying is probably the second oldest profession in the world. Yeah?
What's the first?
And we
obviously,
there's maybe a relation between the two even. Yeah.
Here's a clue. It's not in the cloud.
The thing is that no matter what regulations are being put in place, this will not disappear. Yeah? Spying will not disappear. So it is on us as technologists to build such technologies that our customers can protect themselves, where they have full control over who has access to their data and who not. Yeah, I think what we've seen already, and I think we've been building more and more encryption technologies for our customers, where they have end-to-end control over data that they store. We have a cloud HSM device, where it's a sort of James Bond device, where they can store their secret keys. Anybody just touches the device self-destructs. And so there's a whole range of new encryption technologies that will get in the hands of customers. Many of them open source, such that everybody can transparently inspect these technologies. But I think it's up to us as providers and technologists to actually find solutions such that customers can be guaranteed to protect themselves and that nobody can touch their data, regardless where it's stored.
Has it had an impact on your business, yes or no?
Yeah, I think panels are really interesting. People disagree, so I'll disagree. I think there is no doubt that Edward Snowden's revelations really were last June. It's only been 6 months. Mm-hmm. And the impact I think it has had, maybe we're only the first wave of the impact, but I think we will talk about June of 2013 for the next decade as a pretty seminal moment in how people thought about it and shifted. Now, I'm not suggesting it's slowed down lots of businesses. It clearly, for us, I mean, we have Fortune 500 customers around the world, and in Europe, it definitely has had customers slow down, take the cycle time to close a deal has elongated a bit because people understand how is the data being accessed, how is it being managed, how is encryption being managed. We actually made an investment, an acquisition of a small company called Adept Cloud, which was doing some very leading edge stuff around data security and for cloud-based companies and third-party key management and these things. And frankly, a big part of the reason why we made the acquisition was because of what we were hearing from customers, the heightened awareness and heightened interest in this topic. We're not have any interest. There's a small company called Blue Coat. I shouldn't call it small. Hundreds of millions of revenue. They have been kind of flat for years. And in the last year, as this happened, their revenues have increased like 50%, in large part because of this dynamic. Right. I think the Snowden effect is very real.
Mm. Yeah, person of the year, no question. So I think there are 3 stakeholders. The one is individuals and companies. The message is clear. You have to take responsibility for defending the data that's precious to you, and it's clear that you have to really think hard about defending it against attacks from the inside, which are the hardest attacks Absolutely. To defend against. Essentially, agencies like NSA are insiders in large parts of the world's infrastructure. There's another sort of set of stakeholders, I think, which is what I would describe as more legitimate law enforcement, and I think it is important. We don't want the internet to become a lawless landscape. I think that's a false ideal. I think law enforcement is an important part of society as a whole. But I think what's gone horribly wrong is the balance and due process part of law enforcement. So I think there's a real opportunity for countries that understand that to map out a regulatory framework which is seen as fair, both by business operators, individuals, law enforcement, civil rights people, and so on, and which can create an environment for operators like the cloud infrastructure providers to house data in an environment where everybody feels law enforcement goals are meetable, but people aren't stealing your stuff behind your back, right?
Isn't that a little utopic, though? I mean, do you really see all these stakeholders align and come to an agreement on that?
No, but I think they compete, right? So I live in a wonderful small country called the Isle of Man, and I think there's a real opportunity for them to map out a legislative framework which would attract data centers and data. And I think they can do that in the face of competition from Ireland and the UK and Germany and the US. And I think the hallmarks of that regulatory framework would not be secrecy, blanket secrecy, because I don't necessarily think that's healthy. But it would involve, that the police knock before they come in, right? And I think that it's perfectly plausible for countries to take advantage of that. I think the cloud continues to win. I think the US has imperiled its position as the sort of bastion or the presumptive place where you're more likely to get justice, right?
We're running out of time eerily fast, but I wanted to touch on mobile. By the way, when are we going to see the first Ubuntu smartphones on the market?
Oh, so we just, in fact, signed the first set of agreements around shipping Ubuntu on smartphones, so that'll happen in 2014. Team is really excited about that.
Can you be more specific?
No, I won't be more specific, but thank you for asking. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to deny that. So, I think, talking about revolutions that come in multiple phases, we're kind of uniquely split, and this conference is uniquely interesting because it covers both the infrastructure, the back-end side of the future, but also the front-end side of the future. And what's really interesting to us in mobile is this idea that, in fact, our mobile processors are increasingly converging in capability with our PCs and the traditional centers of our personal computing universe. So I think that computing will live on the body, in the person. You'll have something which is your personal computing engine. Could be your phone, could simply express as a phone, but it will also give you your PC and tablet experiences. And then you'll have the back-end infrastructure, which, if we can truly get to the point where it can be isolated and encrypted, literally could be yours, your agent in the cloud. Perhaps, we're just, again, seeing the birth of that now.
So mobile, how big is mobile for your business?
Mobile's been, the driver of consequence. When we talk about the shift in how computing's working, I think the explosion of tablets has driven, I no longer travel as much with my laptop. I want data from anywhere. I also think in the context of the next 10 years and predictions, it was only really 3.5 years ago that the first tablet of consequence, the iPad, was launched. And so I think you can't overstate the impact of mobile and its impact on the cloud and people's desire to have access to their data from anywhere and be productive. Our use case is more of a professional use case than, say, a Dropbox in the consumer. But I think mobile is a massive for us, and we've seen a 100% increase in the last 3 or 4 months across Android and iOS as we've seen more and more people adopt these new products.
But really, it's more than just access, right? It's also data creation, data organization, more and more.
There's no doubt. We see primarily today data access has been more of a driver. I think in a younger generation, data creation is more and more important. That today is more on the consumer use case than the professional use case where we're focused. But there's no doubt that it's going to continue to be a bigger and bigger part of the cloud.
It's also the center of
I think it's more than just mobile. It is connected devices.
Right.
Yeah, I think even on just types of access, I want to step on my treadmill in the morning in a hotel, authenticate myself, and I want my magazines, my music, my TV, my whatever, everything available for me in that environment at that moment. Now, devices are just becoming a window into data and computing services that live somewhere else. Because we exchange these devices maybe a bit more than everybody else, but twice a year, 3 times a year. You grab your device and it immediately becomes yours and it has all your information immediately at your fingertips. But also, there's all this cool other stuff that's happening. I mean, if you look at all the transport organizations, all instrumenting their buses with GPSs and information streams, but we also have our companies like Waze, who do it for cars, but Move It, for example, same principles, also an Israeli company, that does it for public transport. So where you get a view of actually congestion in public transport, get real-time flows about how to fast go from one place to another. These things become generators of tremendous information that will have great innovation on.
All right. Before we close, lots of opportunities for cloud computing, obviously still in growth mode. What are some of the challenges, aside from the regulatory, data protection, privacy, aside from all that, what are some of the challenges that might slow down the growth in the coming years?
Well, so I talked a little bit earlier about software that runs itself. And I really think we're entering a new era of automation in the back-end infrastructure. The project that I track is Juju, and it's about getting code that runs on cloud infrastructures to essentially crowdsource the operational logic and automate the operational logic of that as well. So I think that the really interesting challenges there are all going to be about dealing with consequences at scale. You know, if you have 5 guys running 1,000 servers, and in fact, if most of the operational logic on there has been crowdsourced, you know, what do you do when things go wrong? Obviously, right now we're fascinated about the possibilities when things go right. But I think we're also entering an era where we have very little ability to roll back from mistakes at scale.
All right. My fellow bearded panelists, I'm sorry to say that our time is up for today. Okay. That was fast. Thank you very much. It was really interesting. And hopefully see you next year.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.